여러분 안녕하세요. 김찬송 선생님입니다. Hi guys, it's Chansong teacher and welcome to another day of Korean class. Let's get started. So, what will we learn today in this class? We will be learning how to write series of events in chronological order. And to do that, we will also be learning new vocabularies and grammar structures. Let's get started. Here are our new vocabulary words for this chapter. Let's read them together. 견학, 견학, 공연, 공연, 민속, 민속, 사물놀이, 사물놀이, 상품, 상품, 전시회, 전시회, 퀴즈, 퀴즈, 필기도구, 필기도구, 들르다, 들르다, 마치다, 마치다, 전시하다, 전시하다, 있다가, 있다가. Why don't you try writing these words down in your notebook? Try writing them out and also define them and translate them. Let's move on to our grammar. What will we learn for this week? Here are the new grammar structures that we will be learning. These grammar structures will help us learn how to write different series of events in our sentence. The first one is 기 전에, which means before you do. The next one is 으 or 응 다음에, which is after you do. And lastly, we have 어야 되다, which means I should, have to, or must do. Let's learn our first grammar structure. So, how do we say, before you do something, we will do this? We would use 기 전에. Let's look at our example here. 밥을 먹기 전에 손을 씻어요. This means before you eat, I wash my hand. As you see here, the action that comes after actually comes first in the sentence. Then you would add your verb. At the end of your verb, you would attach 기 전에, and then you will end the sentence with the action that comes before. You would attach 기 전에 on the verb. Make sure you do not attach it to the noun or the subject of the sentence. Let's look at some common verbs that we will use for our exercise. Let's read them together. 가다, to go. If you want to say before you go, we would say 가기 전에. If we want to say before we do, we would say 하기 전에. Before we eat will be 먹기 전에. Before we give will be 주기 전에. Before we see will become 보기 전에. And before we arrive, before we come, it would be 오기 전에. Let's try practicing this in some of the questions we have in the next page. Let's look at our example. Let's look at 보기, which means example. 간식을 먹다 and 숙제를 하다. These are the two actions or events that will occur that are separated with a slash. And let's try putting this into a sentence. Before we eat a snack, we will do our homework is the sentence we are going for. Therefore, our sentence should look like this. 숙제를 하기 전에 간식을 먹어요. Then let's try working on number 1 together. You see these two actions, 손을 씻다 and 밥을 먹다, separated with a slash. In order to eat, we will have to wash our hands first, right? Therefore, we would put 밥을 먹기 전에 and then write 손을 씻어요. So your sentence should look like this. Now try pausing the video and answer this on your own. I will be showing you the answers in a few seconds. Okay, let's try answering number 2. 일기를 쓰다 and 자다. How can we put that into a sentence? Before we sleep, we will have to write in our journal. Therefore, 자다 comes first, and then you write 기 전에, and then you end with 일기를 쓰다. So, 자기 전에 일기를 써요. Then let's look at the third one. 공부를 열심히 하다 and 시험을 보다. You will have to study before you take the test, right? Therefore, you would write 시험을 보기 전에 공부를 열심히 해요. Then let's look at the last one. 예약을 하다, to make a reservation or a promise. 여행을 가다, to go on a trip. Before you go on a trip, you would have to make a promise, or let's say a agenda that you want to go. Therefore, you would write your sentence like this. 여행을 가기 전에 예약을 해요. You would reserve, let's say, a ticket before you go travel. Let's work on our next grammar structure. In our next grammar structure, we will learn how to say after you do this, we will do that. We can use this, or we could say this in Korean by using 으 or 은 다음에. Let's look at our example. 초콜릿을 먹은 다음에 이를 닦아요. This means after I eat chocolate, I brush my teeth. So how do we write this into a sentence? First, you would have to write the action that comes first. Then you would put your verb and follow that up with 으 or 은 다음에, and then complete your sentence using actions that come afterwards. So, how do we actually put this into practice? You would have to attach 으 or 은 다음에 on the verb, not on the noun or the subject. There is a special rule for this, however. If the verb ends in a consonant, you have to take out 다 and add 은. If the verb ends in a vowel, you have to take out 다 and add 니은 to the end of the verb. Let's look at our example. If you want to say after you do something, you would say 한 다음에 because it ends with a verb. Now let's look at 먹다. 먹다 ends in a consonant because it has 받침 of 기역. Therefore, you would add 은 at the end of 먹다 after you take out 다. If you want to say after you eat, you would have to say 먹은 다음에. Let's try practicing this in our next exercise. Let's try filling in the blank in the paragraph that you see on the screen. We will do that by using the verb that you also see on the screen where the pictures are located, and complete the sentence that is there using the order as seen in the pictures. These are going to be series of events that happen to someone or the person in this picture. Let's try reading the paragraph together. 저는 주말에 발레 공연을 볼 거예요. 공연을 보기 전에 컴퓨터로 예약을 할 거예요. 공연을 뭐뭐 친구하고 식사를 할 거예요. 집에서 감상문을 쓸 거예요. 감상문을 뭐뭐 선생님께 이메일을 보낼 거예요. 이메일을 뭐뭐 잘 거예요. Okay, now that we have read the paragraph, let's try changing the verb that you see on the screen so that we can complete the sentence. Let's look at the first verb, 보다. Does 보 of 보다 have a vowel ending or a consonant ending? It has a vowel ending. Therefore, you should write 본 다음에. Then what about the second one? The second one also has a vowel ending. Therefore, we would only add 니은 under 스 of 쓰다. Therefore, your word should look like this. 쓴 다음에. Now let's look at the next one. 보내다. What do you think this will be? If you guessed this, 보낸 다음에, then you are correct. Very good. Let's learn our last grammar structure of the day. 어야 돼요 or 어야 되다 is our last grammar structure of this day. And it means I should, have to, or must. Let's look at our example to see how this is true. 저녁을 먹기 전에 숙제를 해야 돼요. This can imply that I should do my homework before I eat dinner, or before I eat dinner, I have to do my homework, and it could also mean before I eat dinner, I must do my homework. Let's try learning how to put this in a sentence. First, we write the action that comes after. Then we include the indication of a series of events. Then you would add the action that comes after and end it with 아 or 어야 돼요 or 되다. Let's look at the common verbs that we will use in this scenario. If you want to say I must do, you would use 해야 돼요. If you say I must go or I should go, you would use 가야 돼요. If you say I have to or I should eat, you would say 먹어야 돼요. To give would become 줘야 돼요. To see would be 봐야 돼요. To arrive, to come, would be 와야 돼요. If you want to help, you would use 도와드려야 돼요. And if you want to wash, you would use 씻어야 돼요. Let's try practicing some of these verbs in sentences. Let's look at our example before we work on questions number 1 through 4. Let's read the question there. 아침에 일찍 일어나고 싶으면 어떻게 해야 돼요? What does this mean? This means if you want to wake up early in the morning, what should we do or what should I do? How does 나 reply to this question? 나 replies, 일찍 자야 돼요. This means that you should sleep early. Then let's try working on number 1 together. I've also put the general verb and the context of your answer on the left for your convenience. So let's look at number 1. What is 가 asking? 시험을 잘 보고 싶으면 어떻게 해야 돼요? If you want to do well on a test, what should we do or what should I do? What do you think you should do? We should study. Therefore, we would say 공부해야 돼요. Let's look at number 2. 농구를 잘 하고 싶으면 어떻게 해야 돼요? If you want to be good at basketball, what should we do? We should practice a lot. Therefore, we would use 연습을 많이 해야 돼요. If this is difficult for you, I advise you to go to the previous slide that you see on this video, because the common verb changes, conjugations will be there for you. It will be easier if you memorize it, but have it next to you for this exercise. Then let's go to number 3. 부모님을 기쁘게 해드리고 싶으면 어떻게 해야 돼요? If you want to make our parents happy, what should we do? We should help them out. Therefore, we would use this sentence. 도와드려야 돼요. We must help them, or we should help them. And let's answer our last question for today. 친구들에게 인기가 많은 사람이 되고 싶으면 어떻게 해야 돼요? If we want to be popular amongst our friends, what should we do? This is just an example for how you can answer the question. It would be 친구들의 이야기를 잘 들어주다, which means you would listen to whatever your friend says, or if they have some concerns, you would listen to them. How can we put this into a sentence? We would use, or we would write, 친구들의 이야기를 잘 들어줘야 되다, or 돼요. Very good, guys. That is all for our lesson for this week. My only homework for you is to really practice using our new word and grammar that we learned today at home. Use them with your parents or your siblings or just anyone who visits your house, even your friends. So make sure you do that, and I hope to see you next week. Bye!